Right then, let's do this. Hi guys, what's going on and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So I've been meaning to do an updated tier list for, well, quite a long time now, and I thought we'd finally get around to having a little bit of a look. Now, first things first, I'm a little bit lazy, and I may slightly, just a little bit, just stolen Zimmy's tier list from Season 6. Now, why didn't I create my own tier list, I hear you ask? That's a very good question. Yeah, I'm just too lazy, pretty much. And since Zimmy had done such a fantastic job of it, he's put all these really nice little cards with all the background colours on. Yeah, we've just stolen his. I'll put a link to Zimmy's video in the description down below. So big thanks for him for making the tier list, because he's done a really nice job of it. And yeah, I guess all we're really missing is the new Season 7 units, because it won't actually let me add them in. But since he's done such a nice job, we can just sort of talk through those three right at the end, I thought. And we can still rank everything else kind of accordingly, because a lot of stuff, even some of the older unit tier stuff, has kind of been buffed or nerfed and moved around quite a lot recently. So I felt it was kind of really worth revisiting all this stuff. Now this is, in one, infantry only, and two, of course, just my opinion. You know, you've always got to take this stuff with a pinch of salt. Everyone is going to find different units perform differently. Like, for example, I don't really like Stalwarts, but they are undoubtedly a good unit. So just because I don't personally get along with something doesn't mean that you can't make that unit work for you. Different playstyles are always going to have kind of different results and stuff like that. So bear that in mind. Finally, this is mostly with a thought about siege, not really territory wars. So, yeah, again, bear that in mind. Obviously, things like Falconetti are really amazing in territory wars. They're still really good in siege, but dropping off a little bit. So, let's have a look at what we've got there, because we've got quite a lot to get through, and this is going to make for a pretty long video, so let's just get started. So, Iron Reapers, they're like the OG Tier 5 infantry unit. Gone through a lot of buffs and nerfs over its time. One point was really crazy powerful, could flatten pretty much everything in its way. Received a pretty big nerf and has never really recovered from that situation. They do have their moments, but they are pretty painfully slow. And for me, I think I'll drop them in somewhere around here. I think if you use them really well, you can maybe get them up to the A. Because particularly if you can sort of start XVing them, they do work quite nicely. But I think realistically in most of the situations, I think we're sort of really looking around a B tier. Azaps. A Season 4 unit, one of the Ottoman units. I quite like Azaps. I think they perform their niche pretty nicely. Quite effective at countering Berserkers, which is probably the most common unit we're seeing on the battlefield at the moment. Always do pretty well. They have this sort of counter-strike, this parry, which makes them quite an effective unit in that sense. And for their leadership cost, I think they're a nice unit. I don't think I'd describe them as OP, but I think they certainly drop into the A tier. Black Dragon Javelineers, one of the premium mercenary units. For me, the best of the mercenary units, particularly when you compare it to some of the other stuff, but not a particularly great unit. I think for me, you'd be dropping in somewhere like a C, and I think a C is probably a bit generous at that, if we're being honest. And then I think if we're just dealing with the rest of the mercenary units, since we've started on them now, then Black Dragon Pikemen, well, we actually saw these guys feature in a Palace Guards video very recently, and yeah, they struggled. Black Dragon Spearmen, again, I'm not a huge fan. Some people do like them as almost like a spear militia type unit, and that's kind of understandable. For me, not really a very amazing unit. There should be, is that all the, it is for infantry, isn't it? Damn, I can't express my hatred for sea stag death dealers like I normally try to. Condottieri then. Quite an interesting unit. Season 3 sword and border unit. At the time, certainly, I would say OP or A tier. They used to push heroes around. Used to push heroes off walls. Used to be quite a comical unit to use and fight against. I do feel like they've slipped a lot in recent times. They still have potential and can still do really well in certain situations, but I feel like the meta has kind of overtaken them a little bit and they haven't really changed it enough. For me, I think I'm going to go B, and I feel that's almost quite harsh because Condottieri can still work in really well in a lot of situations, but I think with the amount of stalwarts, the amount of berserkers we're seeing in games now, realistically, Condottieri kind of have slipped a bit recently. The main Javelineers, with them in C, a bit here or there. The main pikemen, actually kind of an interesting unit, one that I don't really make sufficient use of, but for 70 leadership, actually they're really not too bad. They actually can do their jobs pretty decently. Just as sort of like a slightly upgraded version of a serf, basically. And in that capacity, I think they work quite well. The main spearmen, never really liked them, never really got on with them very well. For me, just a C tier unit, we're not really interested. Now, Fortebraccio. I really like the Fortebraccio. One of my favourite units. I loved them when they released back in Season 3. Definitely a highlight for me of the season. Undergone kind of a few nerfs since then, and they really dropped out of favour for a lot of people because of the fact they really lost a lot of their damage output. And whilst their damage output hasn't been buffed, they of course got, with the epic doctrines, the ability to add a stun to them. And now that was game changing because it means that they can basically hold the line in a way that they weren't able to before. And that makes them a viable unit once again. And I really like them. I've always really liked Fortebraccio. Do we stick them in the OP or do we go with an A? It's a tough one. I suspect they're not OP, even though I want to put them in OP. I'm going to put them in an A tier, although they are one of my current favourite units in the game. Halberdier Sergeants are kind of an interesting unit. I don't like Halberdier Sergeants, but a lot of people do. I feel like they're outclassed by Fortebraccios in most situations. But they do get a charge, they can sort of push in and brace quite effectively, they can do quite a lot of damage, and they can be very effective. But I just don't like them, so I'm going to put them in B. Maybe this is just a tier list of all my different prejudices against different units. Halberdiers, normal version. Well, I think the Landschnicks are better in most situations. I'm going to throw these guys in at C. But the Landschnicks themselves, I'm going to put in at B tier. They could almost go into the A. They do have a pretty goddamn awesome charge, and they actually do a really good chunk of damage. I think they're actually a really nice unit. And they do actually do quite a lot of charge damage into Berserkers, which, considering they're kind of like the scourge of the battlefield at the moment, I think that would be pretty reasonable to put them there. Imperial Javelineers. Nice unit. Another one I don't really get on very well with. I think Jav Sergeants excel them in pretty much every single way. I'm going to put Imp Javs in at B tier. Some people are probably going to hate me for that one because they really like their Imp Javs. But for me, Jav Sergeants are the better unit. Can we see our Jav Sergeants? Yeah, A tier. Seem to be coming in with a lot of heroic era units on the A tier. I'm not sure if anything we're going to put into OP. Well, actually, got a bit of an idea. So, Imperial Pikes. Imperial Pike Guard. These are an interesting one. And in many senses, a very meta unit. Certainly one of the most important units in the game at the moment. They fulfill a very unique role. They're the only unit that has sort of this advance, which enables them to walk forwards and basically stop everything in its path, including, or mostly, cavalry. And that's the most important part about them. They're the ultimate cavalry counter. Pretty much our only, bar the Fortebraccio, our only real cavalry counter, the only easy one to use. So that makes them a very effective unit. However, quite a few things have come into the game, particularly in the last season or two, which aren't knocked down as an infantry by Imperial Pike Guard. So that's things like Paladins, because they've got an active block. Palace Guards now with their brace mode. Stalwarts don't get knocked down. Shield Maidens, if they're in a wall, they don't get knocked down. Quite a few things, and Imperial Spear Guard. Any sort of real shield unit that's up and set up doesn't get knocked down by Impike Guard in a way that it all used to. It all used to get pushed over. So Impike Guard used to be the ultimate sort of infantry pushing unit, as well as an effective cavalry counter. At the time, I think that would have, if not been OP, it would have really been like an A-star tier unit. It was an absolutely essential unit in every game. And I think that has slipped now, but they are still the ultimate cavalry counter. And they are still a really important unit on the battlefield, so I think they've got to go in at A tier. Imperial Spear Guard. I think these guys have really slipped a long way, predominantly due to stalwarts. But also we've had with the introduction of things like Paladins and Palace Guards getting a buff, the charge can just cut through them now. I don't think Imperial Spear Guard are an effective unit. I'm going to go C. Might seem harsh, but I think these guys really need a buff. I think they're just not meta at all anymore. And they're just such an easy kill these days. If I see a unit of these with my Paladins, I'm smiling because I know it's an easy set of kills. Because they just can't hold up against it. Same with Iron Caps. If anything, Iron Caps I think are worse. I don't like Iron Caps. I feel like they don't really fulfill the role. Something like a Spear Militia, I think has a bit of a place because it's a really cheap shield unit. You can just throw it up. Yes, it will die. It won't hold that much, but it's just a cheap tanky unit. Imperial Spear Guard, kind of, I guess, it is the ultimate tanky unit. It's just not very meta in the current situation. Iron Caps always just seem a bit half-hearted. Don't really fulfill either. Just kind of free kills, in my opinion. So, Iron Cap Swordsman. I quite like Iron Caps. They have a really nice charge, and they do quite a lot of damage versus enemy heroes. And whilst that's not very effective in most situations, it is always very satisfying running over enemy players with a little low tier unit. So I'm going to throw them in at B tier. Or is that too much? C tier. C tier. Let's not get over generous. Javelin Militia, again, a C tier unit. They can be okay, but not really. Martellatori, then. I almost want to put them in the OP tier. I think I will. The ultimate mercenary unit. Everything you want in a mercenary unit. 30 leadership. You're still getting that full 10% bonus. They give Siege Tower extra defense. They are the ultimate premium unit. They're easily the best premium unit out of the current ones available in the game. And they're just a must-have unit. They are ridiculously expensive at 700,000 silver. But if you can afford it, if you can get the silver together to buy it, just buy it. Absolutely, you won't regret it because it's a unit that you'll bring every single game for the rest of the time that you play Conqueror's Blade. And it will make its money back pretty easily. So absolutely, Martellatori got to be a top tier unit. So, Men-at-Arms and Paladins. I absolutely love my Paladins. I think they are the best unit in the game currently. I just don't think anything really beats them. They do everything for me. They have an awesome charge. They're really tanky. They get a self-heal. I've got the Ironside Doctrine on them, so that kind of ties in with that tankiness. They have an active block, which means they're resistant to things like Imperial Pike Guard, but it also makes them really effective in combat because they really sort of push through everything. They have some nice tight formations, which enables you to get a really sort of tight funneled charge off if that's what you want to do, or you can put them in a loose formation if that's what you want to do. They're just... And the damage output is just insane. Absolutely top tier unit for me. Can't beat Paladins in my opinion. Men-at-Arms, on the other hand, were always a bit of a crap unit. I don't think that's really changed. It's amazing the difference a few changes makes in a unit. The promoted version of the Men-at-Arms is amazing. Men-at-Arms themselves, a little bit of crap really, aren't they? That's my opinion on them anyway. Palace Guards. So these guys got a big buff recently. Very big buff recently. And it has really taken them from C or D tier really right up to the A tier in my opinion. They now have a brace. They are now so much more effective. They can sort of cut through things much more effectively. Really, really like them. Just done a video on them. Watch the video if you want my full opinions on Palace Guards. But yeah, I think it's been a really positive change. Quick celebrity. Oh dear. Can continue talking now. Pike Militia. The original tier 6 unit. The original OG sort of ultimate unit. Now, Pike Militia is really good. Basically entirely because it gets double strikes and stun. It doesn't have a high damage, but it has the bracing stun. Means effectively it can sort of stop units. It definitely used to be the ultimate tier 6. And it feels almost heresy to suggest that it isn't anymore. But I think Pike Militia has slipped a bit. Mostly because of all the blocking units, Paladins, Stalwarts, as we kind of listed off earlier. Shield Maidens, etc, etc. Palace Guards now. Means that it doesn't get the opportunity to apply its damage in the same way. You put these against a unit of Condottieri or anything that doesn't have an active block, then that opposing unit will get basically perma-stunned on the front of the pike militia because this guy just keeps stunning them and they have a really tight formation. But if you put them into a shield unit now, obviously, as soon as the shield unit forms into formation, they don't take any bracing damage anymore because they're just blocking it, and it doesn't cut through block very effectively. So, do we go A or B? At one time, pike militia would have been right up here at the top. I think they've slipped. Unfortunately, I almost think they're B tier now. That's definitely going to get some hate. I'm waiting for the comment on the pike militia, see who gets this far in the video. But yeah, I think they have slipped realistically. Prefecture guards, interesting unit, decent damage. Obviously, they're kind of like the OG condottieri. I think they probably rival a condottieri at the moment. I think B tier is not unreasonable for them. Prefecture pikemen, they have the comedy moments, but realistically, not really a viable unit. Fun when you flatten enemy heroes, but not really a viable unit in my opinion. Rattan pikemen and Rattan round shields that kind of clump these together have some nice little features. I do like the poison damage on the Rattan pikemen, but realistically, are they very effective? Not really. I don't know if I'd say not worth the barrack slot, but realistically, also they're coming in on the D tier. Serfs. Where are we going to put these? Kind of a hard one to judge, really. Obviously, other than sort of as a comedy unit, not really very effective. I'm just going to put all the tenant farmers, village watchmen, and everything to the back here at the moment. We'll perhaps leave these guys out because they're not really ranked in quite the same way. Obviously, great for a low tier siege tower pushing unit. They're all really useful. Woodcutters, I guess, can do a slight amount of damage, but realistically, in any sort of combat situation, yeah, it's just sort of berserker food. Sealadars, interesting unit. Season 4 tier 5 infantry unit that was introduced. They've always kind of struggled a little bit really to find their place. They're not really as tanky as you'd want them to be. Because they get no shield, they can be taken down fairly easily. They do have a pretty insane burst damage output, and for that reason I think they're worthy of A tier. They can do well, but they do kind of struggle in any sort of big fights. It's just those one-on-ones where you can sort of isolate people, and you can sort of come in with your big bodyshes and sort of get all this damage in. And that's kind of where Sealadars do well, but in most situations, I don't know, it can be a bit of a struggle sometimes. It can be a bit of a struggle. So, Spear Sergeants and Stalwarts. Spear Sergeants are the bottom tier, and Stalwarts are the Season 5 promoted version of them. Stalwarts, whoop, straight up at the top, easily. I don't like them. Doesn't make them not a good unit. They're the ultimate shield unit. They do better tankiness than Imperial Spearguard, but they have brace and they do damage. What's not to love? They're a fantastic unit. Obviously, if you get behind them, you can kill them quite effectively, but sometimes doing that is really difficult. If you want a shield unit, then they're ultimately the one to go to. They are the best shield unit in the game at the moment. I think probably most people wouldn't really dispute that. Spear Sergeants, on the other hand, are quite a lot lower. I think they once had a very important place in the game. Well, they did absolutely once have a very important place in the game. They do get the nice cover commander. They're going to be nice for you sort of up to level 60, up to level 100. Once you start to get into that full fat matchmaking, they're going to struggle. Realistically, they're just not the unit they used to be. They're going to have to go in at the C tier for me. Squires, again, a unit I don't really like, to be honest. I'm going to be a bit harsh on them. I don't think they really have a place in the current meta. Again, it's a bit like the Spear Sergeants. Yeah, they'll perform up to sort of level 60, but once you get into the proper matchmaking, Prefecture Guards are better, Condottieri are better. I'm going to put them in at D. I just don't think they really have a place. Their charge isn't that great. They have no burst damage. They have no cover commander to get the unit to sort of focus up to concentrate the damage on a small area. Don't really have a place. Sword Militia, again, I would take domain pikes over them every day of the week. Certainly take pike militia over them. Going to be bottom tier for me. And then Seregs, my once favourite unit. Really did like these guys. Still one of my best games I think I've had with the Seregs. They really had a place sort of Season 4, Season 5. But I think they've slipped a long way now. Yes, Epic Doctrines have helped a little bit in terms of charge cooldown, but it's also buffed other units. They do have a nice charge, but it's so easy to interrupt it, and it's not that devastating. You know, if you get a really clean charge, yes, it can kind of cut through a unit of stalwarts. Not that easy to do in reality, in my opinion. So I think Seregs just aren't quite what they used to be, unfortunately. And so for that, I think I'm going to have to throw them in at B tier. So I'm going to kind of leave the serfs out of it. But let's talk about Season 7. Obviously, I don't have the unit cards here for the reasons mentioned at the start, because I'm too lazy to create my own tier list. Thanks, Sim. But starting with the Season 7 unit, Sons of Fenrir. I think they're actually quite a nice unit. They're a little bit niche, but when you can sort of get them in amongst the enemy archers, they are really effective. They get huge amounts of range damage reduction, which is really nice. So I'm going to throw them in here at a B tier. I'd put them in here, somewhere like this. Then we move on to Berserkers. I don't know if I'd actually call them OP as a unit, but I certainly think they would be sort of probably up in the top category here. Maybe sort of halfway across the top category and the A rank, almost sort of between the two of them. They can be super effective, you know, once you get them played properly, they just cut through everything. But they are equally, I feel they are pretty counterable. Actually, I find Pike Militia is one of the more effective counters. I'm thinking about doing a video on this, countering Berserker with Pike Militia. You know, if you get a Paladin charge off into the Berserkers, they get flattened. Get your Landsknecht charge off into them. You get them stuck up against a unit of guns. You know, they can be killed fairly easily in the right situation. It's just that if you make a mistake, the Berserkers cut you to pieces. And that's kind of what makes them an effective unit. Then we move on to Shield Maidens. A unit that I still don't get on with fantastically well. Definitely softened my view on them a little bit since I last did a video on them. But I think we're somewhere between A and B, somewhere like here, somewhere between these two categories, I think. I think B would be a bit harsh, but I think A, putting them on par with things like Fortebraccio and Azaps, would probably be a little bit generous, so I'd put them somewhere between those two. But anyway, that is my ranking. Kind of interested to see what you guys all think about this. Do let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure some of you will hate me for some of the some of the places I've put things. Hopefully we don't cause too much upset. They're always a little bit controversial, these ranking things. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. As I say, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And of course, subscribe to the channel for lots more Conquered Blade content. Thanks for watching, guys. I shall see you all on the next one.